Hey, Warrior Saints! Welcome to the Way of the Warrior Saints Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you, beautiful people, in with us on this bright and glorious Monday here in the desert. A little warm, but beautiful. Before we start, look, it's your turn, it's your time. Way of the Warrior Saint, warriorsaints.org. You got to visit this website to join us on the Way of the Warrior Saint. You have two options right now. One, get your book. If you don't have it, get it, read it, share it with a friend. Buy one for a cousin, buy one for your parents, for someone you work with. I don't know. It's good stuff. We had fun with it. You can get your copy there at warriorsaints.org. You see that website right there. The other thing, and perhaps most important, is that we would love to invite you to join us on the Way of the Warrior Saint by subscribing to our flagship program by the very same name, the Way of the Warrior Saint. It is a program, a library filled with teachings about how we can become super awesome. That's all it is. By God's grace, by following the life that He calls to us, we can become super awesome. That being said, we're going to talk this week a little bit about thinking, right? We kind of alluded to it, started last week. I was on a rampage towards the end of the week because just chaos in the world around us. I was like, oh my gosh, we just have to think. Like, where are people being thoughtful? And a lot of it I blamed on the news media and the headlines, the clickbait that they throw at us, like these crazy titles. And in that, one of our Warrior Saint friends in Indiana, Josh, we thank you very much, Mr. Josh K. We appreciate it. He sent us this. So Greg is going to throw it up on your screen. You should see it right here, right about now. And it's the headline that says, this was a headline last week. And our friend, as I said, Josh in Indiana saw it. He's like, the stock market is dropping again. What is behind its worst slump since July? And you read it and you have to read it in that voice, right? Like the Halo announcer guy's voice. You have to read it like that. And you can see where the fear and dread, because what do you think, like, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, its worst slump? Is the economy crashing, right? That's already a shred of news out there. Like, the economy is in jeopardy. It may be, I don't know. I'm not an economist, but that's like fear that's being promulgated and put into our minds. Everything is fearful. And then, as Josh rightly brought up, he's like, dude, July was 3 weeks ago. Like, what are you talking about? Like, sometimes the market has a bad week, and it happened to be this worst slump since July when the Afghanistan thing broke, right? Like, so you could see that maybe the country was like, oh, we better get some money off the table, going to war. Who knows, right? Like, but I don't care about any of it. I care about the headline and the fear that it's designed to produce in you and I, those who consume it and read it. And many of us just oblige. And when we hear these things, and when we read these things, and worse, when we click them and consume all of the things in the article, what are we doing? We're filling ourselves with fear. And fear, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and as we have in our Warrior Saints library, fear leads to anger, right? And I mean, fear is the two motivators in life, love and fear, right? That's just kind of how it works. Two things that motivate all human behavior and action, love and fear. And fear, when we submit to it, it leads us to anger, right? And anger, as you well know, leads to the dark side. I mean, it just does. And so, all of this being said, how do we find a way to replace that fear in us with love? Because here's this beautiful verse. Listen to this from 1 John 4. We hear that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. And what you may not see on your screen, but the rest of that verse says, for fear has to do with punishment, and he who fears is not perfected in love. Now, in this epistle in 1 John, he's talking obviously about Jesus Christ and the cross, but you can see how, that's what should transcend all of our life anyways. And you can see how the apostle, as he writes this, is saying, like, look, if you live in this constant fear, which is leading you to anger, which is leading to the frustration and the hurt that you and I feel, there's not going to be a lot of room left for love, right? Like, but when love is perfect, there's no fear. Here's a perfect example about that. My bride and I think, have a beautiful, beautiful relationship. But I mean, biased, obviously, but I think we have the best marriage on the planet. I mean, I love her tremendously. She loves me tremendously. Neither of us is perfect, and therefore our love cannot be perfect because we are not. However, it's about as perfect as this man and that woman can make it. It's really a beautiful, beautiful, and there's no fear in that. Well, I'm a little afraid of her sometimes. But for the most part, like, there's no fear in that, right? Like, I mean, I am not worried. She is not worried. There's perfect trust in this love. Right? I know. I got it. I know in my heart. I know, and she knows in her heart. And so this love, again, though it's not perfect, but because it's beautiful and it's trending, or at least struggling towards that perfection that 1 John is calling us to, we don't have the fear of you know, the normal fears that people might have in the world. And I think that's the same thing in the headlines that we read and the media that we consume and the emotions that are produced from all of that kind of consumption. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm rambling at this point, but it just, to me, it makes perfect sense. It seems clear that when love is perfected, and by that meaning chasing Christ, chasing the cross, to be living crucifixionally, when love is like that, there's no room for fear. But conversely, when we click those clickbait headlines like stock market crash since July, right? When we click that stuff and consume that, fear is just going to step in there naturally. It's just the human reaction. That emotion is there. It's gonna jump in, and when that comes in, there ain't a lot of room for love because it tends towards anger. So here's the challenge. I'm about to say some maybe seemingly outlandish things to you. Don't read them and don't click them, right? So if you can avoid that stuff, avoid it, right? Don't bring in, like we use that metaphor of the sponge all the time. Don't bring in filthy water that your sponge will have no choice but to absorb. Make sure the water, i.e. the things that you consume is pure and clear like fresh water. If you can do that, I'm telling you guys, it makes a difference in your soul. It makes a difference in your mind. Ultimately, it makes a difference in your life. We love you, beautiful people. I hope this week for you is awesome and fabuloso. We are going to be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about think before we speak. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about think before we act. So we might have a fun week thinking about thinking. Love you, beautiful people. Till tomorrow, as always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.